I filmed this entire video and I realized I hated it. So here we are redoing this one more time. Hello and welcome, my name is Ansu. If you're new here, consider subscribing down below. Today I wanted to talk about the books that I read in the month of November. Let's get this straight. I started off November pretty strong. I was reading quite a bit and I was very happy about the books that I was reading. And then it kind of hit a weird slump almost. I literally, I was reading so much. By like the 20th, I was done. I was barely reading anything. So I did want to talk about all the books that I had been reading. Before we get into the books of November, essentially, I think I mentioned in my October wrap-up that I wanted to talk about one more book that I read in October, and I believe that was You Can Trust Me by Kiersten Modglin. It follows around May Barlow, whose husband literally books like a fancy cruise for her to go on, and she's really upset by this because her brother had died when she was young, like a boat incident where he drowned, and it was the anniversary of his death, and her husband essentially booked a cruise on that day. So she was obviously not very thrilled, and they still went on this cruise because she's like, you know what, I have to move on, blah blah blah. They go on the cruise, and then suddenly she goes missing. We don't know what happened to May. She's just like gone off the face of the planet, it feels like, and we don't know where she is or anything like that. And it's the mystery surrounding that. So obviously, whoever the cops are, they're suspecting the husband, and things are going from there. The story itself, I give like 3 stars, I think. Ending was interesting. The last 20 or so percent of the book was pretty interesting, but it is also pretty predictable. I will give it that Kiersten Modglin has this tendency to make things very out of this world, like it could never happen, but kind of makes sense, kind of a situation. It's weird, but I don't know, it just makes it seem a little believable. That's how Kiersten Modglin just writes books. In my personal opinion, it's like, I don't know how to explain it in a nicer way, but it is an interesting storyline, and I read it. So I just wanted to give that a shout before I went into the books that I read in November, but let's jump right into it. The first book I read in the month of November was The Housemaid by Freida McFadden. This one is so popular. Literally everyone has been raving about this book, and I'm also going to add on to that hype. I gave this 4 stars. We're following around Millie, who's at her last straw. She doesn't have anything to live for. She's literally living out of her car. She doesn't have a job. She's completely drained out. She doesn't know what to do with her life. And then one day, this position opens up as a housemaid. And it's in this like really fancy looking house with a gate and everything. And she meets up with Nina Winchester, who seems like such a sweet young woman. And Millie's just so excited to work here. Once she agrees to work there and basically moves in, she realizes the room that she's going to be staying in is in the attic, and that room only locks from the outside, which is already very creepy. But on top of that, Nina seems to be acting a lot differently than she was in the beginning, and we don't know what's going on with that. And she's married to Andrew, he's such a handsome, lovely man, and we see these very stark opposite characters, and we don't know why or how they're really together, and Millie is even questioning that at some point. Nina also has a young daughter. Andrew is a stepfather, and she's also a little bonkers, which is it's interesting to read for sure. The funny thing is that I was actually reading this book in the middle of watching a romantic drama. It was called The Vow. It's a fairly old movie. It stars like Channing Tatum and Rachel McAdams. It's such a cute movie. But I was reading this book, and I was in like the middle of this book where a certain scene seemed a little romantic, and I was like, Ansu, you're reading a thriller. This is not romance. Like, I had to step in and be like, girl, this is not going to end well for you. So it was just interesting just to see how this whole thing played out. And I think this will be such a fantastic movie. If it is not already, I think it will be great. Just that sense of panic and urgency. It's just so cool. I really enjoyed this book. I cannot wait to read the sequel to this one. It was very interesting. The next one I read was Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. I have read a few other books by Lisa Jewell, and I think this is the one that I like the least so far. Around 7 or 10 years ago, Ellie Mack, this very charming young girl, goes missing. She's about 15 years old. She goes missing. We have no leads as to what happened to her, why she went missing, did she run away? We don't know anything about her. A body wasn't found, like nothing. And her mother Laurel obviously has Ellie, but also has 2 other kids who she kind of ignores at this point since Ellie has gone missing, and she resents her other daughter for not going missing instead of Ellie, because Ellie was the angel of the family. She was just a perfect child. And the fact that she went missing instead of the other daughter is just something that causes a lot of resentment in Laurel. Fast forward a few years, they get a lead as to what happened to Ellie, and it seems like she ran away from home or whatever. Laurel is finally like putting this thing to rest, and she's like, okay, this happened. She's probably dead. There's nothing else to go on. And then she meets this really handsome young man at like a coffee shop. They hit it off, and it's just really cutesy at that point. She understands that he has like two daughters, and she ends up meeting both of these daughters. One of them is just like a grumpy teenager, and they don't click very immediately. And then she meets the precious little child, and she's about 8 years old or so, and she looks uncannily like Ellie, the missing daughter of Laurel. She's like really curious to know how they look so alike, and she's creeped out by it almost. The thing I really didn't like about this was the twists and turns that happened. I felt like it was A, very predictable, B, it felt very impossible. Like, I'm sure terrible things happen in the world, there are terrible people in the world, I get that. But the way that it was portrayed in this book did not feel very believable to me. Again, I'm sure it could happen, but it just, like, no leads whatsoever, just didn't, I couldn't get by it. Another thing that really threw me off was how Laurel was treating her other two children. And then obviously they have such a strained relationship. And then suddenly, by the end of the book, they're just like besties. It was like, bro, how did you reconcile so quickly? And you're like, just, I love you. That's it. You know, everything's worked out now. But there's so many years, like almost 10 years of resentment that should have grown between these characters. And we don't really see how they resolved it. And it just became this thing where I was just like, how? This does not make any sense to me. So, like, overall, when I'm looking at this book, I didn't really enjoy it as much as I would have liked to. It was a fine book, but I don't know, it was just not my cup of tea, didn't really enjoy it that much. It, it was entertaining, I'll give it that, but it was not the perfect book. Next up, I ended up reading The List by Kiersten Modglin. Let's just agree to say that this book is fucking weird. We're in this really small town where this new family wants to move into this cute little house, and they see it and they're just like, oh, this is perfect, we want to live here. As it is a small town, it's already a creepy setting, but the people in that neighborhood is just like, they do not freaking move here. This is not a good place to be at. But the young woman who is buying the house, she's like, oh, you know what? They're just staying because they don't want to sell the house. We're just gonna get it anyway. And they move in. This little family moves into this small little house in this little town. And one day this lady goes to like the local supermarket and she sees a list. Everyone's freaking out about this list because there's some kids' names on it. And they're just like, oh my god, my child's gonna die. Oh my god. She does not know what's happening. She's freaking out. She's like, what is going on? And then slowly it comes on the news that every single person's name that was on the list ends up dying somehow. And it's not very obvious. So they're dying with like their peanut allergy, or they fell off a building or something like that. It's just ridiculous things that feel like it happens by accident and it's not on purpose or anything like that. It was not calculated. That's how it felt like. So our main character is basically investigating it, and she's like, why is no one reacting to this? All these deaths seem very random, and also nobody's doing anything about it. They're not connecting the dots that something's really wrong, and it's connected to this list. It seems kind of interesting, but it's like unnecessary killing of children for no reason, and I can't like stand by that, first of all. But also, this is supposed to be orchestrated by one person. Fucking ridiculous. I don't believe it, not even a little bit. And also, the motive of this person for doing the certain thing, and I'm just like, so dumb. Last reveal of who the person is also ridiculous. I couldn't stand it. I did not like this book. It was just not fun. I give it like 2 stars. Again, no shit to the author. I do enjoy her writing. So there's just some books that are not vibing with me, and this was not it. Didn't like it. Next up, I read Spy X Family Volume 3 or Spy Family Volume 3. I always say Spy X Family. I don't know. Volume 3 is elegant, as always. This one follows around this man who's a spy, and this woman who's an assassin, and this young girl who is a telepath. She can read minds, and they become sort of a family on paper. When the government investigates into women who are unmarried, they're just like, oh, there's something wrong, they're working against the government, and they end up getting killed somehow. That's how this world works. And so they end up in like this marriage of convenience, and this man who's a spy wants to infiltrate it into this school where this young girl is going to go to. And it's like a boarding school, so he wants that daughter to be friends with like a governor's son so that he can get into the governor's house and kill him. That's the plot line. I feel like the series is kind of dragging on at this point for me. It's only volume 3, and I just don't get that urge to pick up these books and just read it. That's the only thing that's like really throwing me off, but it's cute and fun. I'll give it that. So honestly, at this point, it's just dragging. I wanted to go somewhere faster, so that's the only thing. The last book I read in the month of November is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. A lot of people really hate this book for some reason. I personally really enjoyed it. I give it like 4.5 stars. So fun. It's not perfect, I'll give it that. But it's so fun. You're following around Violet Sorrengail, who has always thought that she was going to go into the Scribe Quadrant. Scribe Quadrant is basically just librarians, and they're just very good at what they do. Her mother, who is the general, essentially forces her to get into the Writer's Quadrant. The Writer's Quadrant is this brutal, very physical sector where you go through a lot of challenges where you can easily die, and then finally you get connected with a dragon, and if the dragon like rejects you, you can also get killed at that point. They can literally flame you off. That's pretty much it. Things could go wrong at any point in time. So with like different types of obstacles, and they could literally fall to their death. A lot of crap is going on. Dragons could literally burn them alive. It's a lot. And Violet goes into this already having a lot of enemies because there was this rebellion that happened like a decade ago. Those people basically got killed off by the general who is Violet's mom. And these people, these rebellious people's children are going to this academy. So obviously Violet has to deal with these people possibly going to kill her. And it goes on like that. We also have another love interest character named Xaden, who is one of the main rebels' son, enemy's lover sort of. And I think this is just a very, very entertaining book. So if you're into YA books, I think you can really enjoy this. I think it's supposed to be like new adult or adult fantasy. Really enjoyed this book. It was really fun. The dragons are just so fun to read from. The way that they connect with these characters and everything is just, it's so endearing and really, really fun. I really enjoyed it. You can literally see some dialogues, especially by Xaden, when things that he says, it's so cringy at points. It's so out of this world. Like things that you would never say as a human being, no matter what age you are. And that's exactly what Xaden says. And I'm just like, are you really saying these things? This is ridiculous. Because that's how it sounds. And honestly, it's not great, but I really enjoyed it. Alright, those are all the books I read in the month of November. I have to continue on with December. We're already on like day 5. We'll talk to you all about the books that I want to read in December and stuff later. But yeah, that's it for me. If you're new here, hi, welcome. My name is Ansu. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell to be notified every single time I upload a new video. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you all next time with another one. Until then, I'll talk to you all in the comments. Bye!